Okay guys, back to basics. So I picked up this Husky 350 on Craigslist, literally from a guy named Craig. So thank you, Craig. I paid $60 for it. I've torn it down. I've torn it down for three reasons. One, plastic clamp. This has never been replaced, needs to be replaced. Number two, the bearing cap needs to be resealed. The seal that they have from the factory is unreliable. Number three, we've gotten lucky on this chassis. There is no burn mark here. Often there's a burn mark here because the muffler comes loose. I assure you the muffler was on very tight. So, the muffler did not come loose on this model. So what I have is a very clean chassis, good components here. Basically everything worked except the owner said the saw didn't run right. He had already bought a new saw, so this one was just going, and I got it for $60. So basics are, if you're gonna buy a Husky 350, number one, you gotta get it cheap. You gotta get it cheap because unless it's had a rebuild and unless it's had a full teardown, reseal, muffler brace, and had this this intake clamp changed out, you need to do that. You just need to do that. So unless it's had that done already, it's really not worth a lot of money. Now, this particular model had excellent compression, at least for a dished piston. Dished pistons are usually 110 pounds. This one actually had 120 pounds in compression. So I got the point initially that this really hadn't been used that much, and overall there was no air leak. So as it turns out, that's correct. As far as I can tell, the bearings and seals are probably still good. There are no marks at all on the piston. It's pristine. The clamp was still tight, sort of, and the bottom bolts are still tight. So all those things need to come into alignment to say, okay, now we have something that's pretty inexpensive, but probably worth it to rebuild. All the components are fairly undamaged. They're all really nice looking. It'll be a very nice saw. And it came with a bar and chain. So rebuilding it, what am I going to do? You have to tear it down to the bearings. So I'm going to tear this down even further because the bearing cap here needs to be resealed. So you just have to tear this whole thing down. So what am I going to do as I rebuild it? Well, the motor is pristine. I really don't want to change that, but what you can do is get rid of this stupid dished piston. Husqvarna intentionally detuned these. So I can put in a flat top piston and gain a bump in compression just by doing that. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to grind a little on this bearing cup, the bearing cap, and I'm going to grind it down a little bit so that I optimize squish. So where the piston goes up a little bit closer to the top of the dome of the cylinder head. So I want to optimize squish somewhere around 20 thousandths of an inch. So hopefully I can do that. Between the two, flat top piston, optimized squish, I should get a significant bump in compression, hopefully 160 pounds, maybe 170. If I can get somewhere in there, that's a nice bump in performance right there. Also, I'm going to do a little bit of port work to the motor. Probably not going to go completely crazy, but I'm going to smooth things up and make sure all the passages and everything are nice and clean and clear. And maybe muffler mod it a little bit, maybe open up the muffler a tad bit. Once I do all that, I'm going to have an excellent running saw. And what did it cost me? Here's what it cost me. A piston, okay, so whatever that costs. If you buy a Meteor piston, which are pretty nice, then they're probably somewhere around 30 bucks. You need to have a new OEM clamp kit. Now you can modify the one on the carburetor, but I like to have this nice new OEM kit. You might as well. It's not that expensive from your dealer, probably 8 or 10 bucks. Metal clamp. There are actually many ways to do it. This is a 346 XP muffler bracket. fairly inexpensive. I get them from the dealer. This happens to be from China, but it doesn't matter. Cut one leg off and attach the other leg to the top bolt on the dog. So probably 10 bucks for that. Now I'm not going to spend, well, I happen to have this bearing cup here that I've already machined, but you can do it to the existing one so you're not spending any money there. So overall, pretty inexpensive. 30 bucks, 10 bucks, hopefully less than 10 bucks. So 50 bucks. Not too bad. Big question. Why was this not running right? Good compression, at least for this model 350. Good compression. No air leaks. What was going on? Was it something in the carburetor? And the answer is, I don't think so. I'll show you what it is. Again, back to basics. You got a buggered fuel line right here. Big cracks. You think that was a problem? I think that was a problem. So, this little thing put this whole thing out of service. 99% this was the problem. This was the main problem with the whole thing. Mainly ethanol does this to fuel lines. So, you know what? It's pretty common on Husky lines, and unfortunately puts the whole saw out of service for a very inexpensive line. Now, fortunately, the saw went out of service, and now I can make the updates that need to be made. And the saw is in reasonably nice shape, so it's going to be in really nice shape when we're done. Anyway, this is kind of a really quick, rough overview of how I approach a Husky 350. Just happened to pick this up off of Craigslist. I know it's not like I need another one, but for 60 bucks I couldn't help myself. Craig was happy, I was happy, and at the end of the day, you're going to get a good running saw. But it's going to cost you a couple hours worth of work. So, got to tear the whole thing down, make sure the whole thing's clean, build it on back.